stock of all this, we have with us the chairperson and MD at Godrej Consumer Products, Nisaba Godrej, joining in on the show right now. Nisaba, hi, good morning. Good to have you on the show. Help us understand what are the current domestic trends when it comes to demand that you're seeing vis-a-vis what we saw last year. And also if you could elaborate a little bit more about how the comparison stacks up when it comes to rural trends as well as urban.
Sure. So we had a very strong start to the year with this double-digit profitable growth. And, I'm happy to report that even on a two-year basis, we grew 24% but even on a two-year basis, the growth was 11%, very strong EBITDA growth of 29%, and at a two-year CAGR 15%. India had, I was very happy with our India performance. We grew at 19%, and it was again double-digit growth on a two-year basis. We saw good demand. We saw May definitely, when we were in the throes of the second wave, things slowed down significantly, especially in rural, because I think rural was much more impacted this time than they were last year. But then we saw sort of June pick up, and July has also been quite strong. So we see demand really holding up. There are obviously K curves in these categories, which I've talked of before. So categories like household insecticides, hygiene, soaps, people want to sort of protect their health. So we see that, especially when there's a COVID wave going on, demand getting even stronger, while the more discretionary categories soften. But, quarter one, we saw broad-based growth across categories. And in something like household insecticide, we had double-digit growth, on a very high base last year also. So I've been very happy with our India performance.
Okay, let's talk about the individual segments then. And I wanted to understand as to how the growth has been for the household insecticide segment in particular.
Of course, there's always, some amount of seasonality. And that's why, we always tell analysts, investors, to look at it, to look at growth across the year and not just in a particular quarter. But I think a lot of, I also think it's been excellent execution by the team. And we've seen sort of broad-based growth across our different, whether it's our electrics, our aerosols, we've seen broad-based growth. And we have this new launch, which has now been, I think, in the market for almost 2 years now, called Gold Flash Liquid Vaporizer, which was a very good new technology, which is doing really, really well. So I think a lot of the inputs that we put in and executing very strongly is really showing up in this strong growth.
Ms. Godrej, could you take us through specifically what the trends are that you're witnessing in the soaps and hair colors segment, especially if you compare it on a sequential basis?
We would have seen double-digit growth again in both these categories. Obviously, hair color was coming off a very low base from last year, but soaps again on a two-year basis would be sort of double-digit growth. I think hair color, we've seen in each wave that there has been an impact, but then it bounces back. Very, very quickly.
One of the issues that you've had to contend with is higher palm oil prices and also packaging material that's impacted the gross margins. Do you think that the gross margins have bottomed out though? And would we see a recovery from this point on?
I think we've not seen this kind of commodity pressure in a decade. So it's hard to say exactly what will happen. We have seen palm oil prices sort of soften. We're just focusing on what we can do and what our strategy is. And that is, take these calibrated price increases, but definitely volume growth and market share is our main focus. So if we have to make a trade-off between that, we will do that. Work with your portfolio, work with price pack architectures, and then just manage your fixed overheads and other costs very carefully. So, I hope things ease out, but these days we cannot be sure about a lot of things.
Right. Nisaba, there's just one more thing. You've been taking calibrated price hikes to try and mitigate the RM cost pressure. Is it enough to support the margins, or could we expect more price hikes in the near future?
And we'll keep looking at calibrated price increases, but the focus is still going to be on growth and volume growth.
Sure. Your Indonesia sales, however, have seen some amount of pressure. What is the outlook going forward?
So I think Indonesia, I think the last 4 quarters have really been tough. We had flat growth this quarter and about a 3% growth on a two-year basis. They've had a very bad second wave, like India. And if you look at sort of even the FMCG peers there, growth has been very muted there. So, I don't think, we're going to get back to double-digit growth very soon in Indonesia. But, we are sort of putting in things to help with growth. We had this new brand that we did last year, which reached 150 crores, Sanitor. So I think it's just doubling down on our categories and making sure that we're sort of executing to the best of our abilities there.
Nisaba, good to have you on the show and good luck for the future quarters. Let's move